Wind howled through the streets of New York City, carrying a bitter chill that made people pull their coats tighter and quicken their pace. The sidewalks were dusted with fresh snow, crunching softly beneath hurried footsteps. The city, always alive with movement, now seemed colder, harsher, indifferent to those who walked its streets. John, a middle-aged businessman, wrapped his scarf around his neck and checked his watch. It was late, and after a long day of meetings and deadlines, he just wanted to get home, have a warm meal, and rest. He descended the steps of the subway station, his thoughts occupied with nothing more than catching the next train. That's when he saw him. A homeless man sat on the cold stone steps, bundled in a thin, tattered blanket. His hands, red from the cold, trembled as he held out a small cup. His face was weathered, his eyes tired yet still holding a glimmer of hope. "Spare some change, sir?" The man's voice was weak, barely audible over the bustling city noise. John hesitated. His instinct was to walk past. He had seen countless homeless people before. But something made him stop. He reached into his pocket and found a single quarter. Just one. Not enough to buy a meal, not even enough for a cup of coffee. But without thinking much about it, he dropped the coin into the man's cup. "God bless you, sir," the man said, offering a weary smile. John barely acknowledged him. He was already walking away, descending further into the subway. The train arrived, and he boarded, his mind already shifting back to the comforts of home. That night, he had a dream that changed everything. John found himself standing in an unfamiliar place, bathed in a soft, golden light. Before him stood a figure, radiant, clothed in white, his presence exuding both authority and deep compassion. John instantly recognized him. "John," Jesus said, holding something small between his fingers. "Do you remember this?" John looked closer. It was the quarter he had given away just hours before. "Yes, Lord, but it was just a coin. It wasn't much," John replied hesitantly. Jesus' eyes were kind, but filled with wisdom. "Not much?" he repeated. Then he spoke words that sent shivers down John's spine. "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Matthew 25 verse 40. John suddenly saw the homeless man's face, but something was different. The quarter had transformed. It was now a loaf of warm bread, a thick coat, a place to sleep. The man's eyes, once filled with exhaustion, now shone with hope. John woke up with a start. The dream lingered in his mind, more vivid than any dream he had ever had. He sat up in bed, heart pounding, realizing he had made a mistake. He had dismissed that moment as insignificant. But in God's eyes, it had mattered. And he had to do something about it. The next morning, John took a different route to work. Instead of heading straight to the office, he stopped by a small cafe and bought a hot breakfast sandwich and a cup of steaming coffee. Then, he went into a store and picked up a thick winter coat. With the bag in hand, he retraced his steps back to the subway entrance. His breath came out in white puffs as he scanned the area, hoping to find the man again. And there he was. Michael, as John later learned his name, sat in the same spot, his hands now tucked under his arms to fight the cold. When John approached, Michael looked up, his expression a mixture of surprise and curiosity. "I should have done this yesterday," John admitted, handing him the food and the coat. Michael's eyes widened. "For me?" John nodded. "Yeah. I figured you could use a hot meal." Michael took the coffee and held it in both hands, letting the warmth seep into his fingers before taking a grateful sip. "Thank you. You have no idea how much this means to me." They talked for a while. John learned that Michael had once held a steady job but had lost everything after an unexpected series of hardships. He had been on the streets for months, each day a struggle to survive. Before leaving, John reached into his wallet and pulled out a small card. "This is my number," he said. When you're ready, call me. I might be able to help you find a job. Michael looked at the card as if it were a ticket to another life. I don't know what to say. Just take care of yourself, John said. And don't lose hope. Michael nodded, his voice thick with emotion. God bless you. Weeks passed. Life went on, and John wondered occasionally about Michael, but didn't expect to hear from him. Then, one evening, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Hello? John, it's Michael. A pause. I just wanted to say, I got a job. John smiled, surprised but overjoyed. That's amazing. How did it happen? Michael chuckled softly. Believe it or not, it started with that quarter. I used it to buy a cheap cup of coffee at a cafe, just to stay warm a little longer. The owner saw me and offered me a temporary cleaning job. From there, I worked hard, and now I have a real job and a place to stay. John was silent for a moment, overwhelmed by how a simple act, something he had done without much thought, had changed the course of someone's life. At that moment, he truly understood Luke 6 verse 38, Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together and running over, will be poured into your lap. Kindness was never wasted. Even the smallest act could set off a ripple that reached farther than one could ever imagine. John never saw giving the same way again. He had learned that God could take even the smallest offering and turn it into something miraculous. And he also learned that kindness, when given freely, always had a way of coming full circle. So the next time you have the chance to help someone, even if it's just a small coin, don't hesitate. Because in the hands of God, even the smallest gift can change a life forever.